So, Model 2 VA1 triple bypass. This is a pretty popular mod, and this is probably one of the most common revisions of Genesis to do it on. And while it's a great mod, there isn't really one place you can go to get all the instructions for how to do it. I'm going to show you some things that often get missed here, and hopefully your mod will come out better as a result. So, like I said, there isn't one place to go get the instructions because nobody's written all the instructions yet in one concise document. So, I'm not doing the whole thing. I'm just telling you what you're likely to miss if you follow what's online. So, first of all, on these revisions, it tells you to solder D right. Now, the reason it tells you to solder D right is that if you're following the mega amp instructions, you will have removed R21. If you don't remove R21, leave the D jumper open. So either remove R21 and solder D right, or leave R21 and don't solder the D jumper. Another thing is the triple bypass board drives a sync signal into the composite pin so that your sync on composite cables will work correctly, like your HD Retrovision cables. In order for this to work right, you have to disconnect the composite output from this video encoder, not just the RGB, but also the composite output. And you can do that via, I believe, R49, CE12, and EM2. You can see I've got CE12 and EM2 both removed here. In fact, I would say you would probably just want to break off all three of these. You can wiggle them until they break off, or you can desolder them. All three of these EMI filters, because they're for composite, 5-volt, and mono audio. Composite and mono audio aren't relevant anymore, and 5-volt, you'd prefer to tap it directly from the regulator. Another thing is for the RGB lines, you want 5.6K pull-ups on the RGB lines. Tianfeng just wrote an article about this on Retro RGB. And you can see that I've got them kind of bodged in right here. And that's because I cut the RGB traces here to give it kind of a straight shot. Now, if you don't want to do that, one thing you can do is come over here and the 3 RGB lines hit these 6 resistors. And I believe you can remove the 4.7s and leave the 5.6s in place. That adds a bit of a stub to your RGB lines that might pick up noise. It's too short to cause any kind of significant reflection, but it's not the best way to do it. It's definitely much easier though. And the reason you don't want to just leave all this connected is that the input circuitry and the encoder will actually pull the RGB lines down and make the picture a bit darker. Now another thing that I see people doing is cutting traces to the CSYNC pin and then running a wire to the sync pad. So if you look at the schematic for this S sync pad here and this S pad here are actually directly connected. And the CSYNC signal that comes to the AV out port is totally fine. You don't need to do anything to it. So don't cut any traces, don't solder anything to the sync pad. Just let it pick up the sync from here and put it back out on the composite pin at 75 ohms. What else am I thinking about? You will likely, well, not likely, but there's a good chance you'll run into issues with the triple bypass board contacting the bottom RF shield. And you can see I've dealt with that with a little cutout here and folding this over right here. You could also put electrical tape on it. So that, there's two issues. You don't want it shorting to the shields. It's usually like this capacitor here that ends up shorting to the RF shield. But you also You also might not be able to fit the board back in because you've got this extra thing sticking out. I'm just trying to think if I got everything. Okay, yeah. So Tianfeng does recommend just going straight from the regulator to the triple bypass board with 5 volts. You can see I've added some extra capacitors. You can ignore that. And if you do that and you get rid of all 3 of these, then you're hopefully providing the triple bypass with a bit cleaner power than if it were taking the 5 volts from the AV out. So I'd say use the CSYNC from the AV out because it's fine. Maybe don't use the 5 volts from the AV out. You can, it just might not give you the best result. And then you can actually completely so we're past the required stuff and on to some bonus tips here. You can actually completely remove this op amp. It's not doing anything anymore, and all of the other capacitors as well. And then what I do is I remove these 2 resistors and I jumper the FM lines over here, and then I can tap the FM lines on the back side from these 2 holes, and that just makes it look cleaner. If you do it the recommended way, which is to just go from FM through the hole in the board around to the back, that's totally fine. I just didn't like it, so I did it this way instead. You do not have to remove this op amp. You do not have to remove anything other than what the mega amp install tells you to remove. Yeah, I think that's about it. So in summary, you need to disconnect composite video with either removing this capacitor. Oh, I remembered. Change these capacitors before you put the triple bypass on, because once the triple bypass is on there, you'll have to remove it to change these caps, and they're probably needed. If they're in need of being changed, you want to change them before you do the triple bypass. I'd almost say the same for these caps, just because your wiring is going to cover them up, but that's a little less of an issue. I think I got just about everything. Hopefully this helps people out.